Hello, and welcome to the Southampton versus Leicester City post-match analysis. And what an incredible game of football that was. I had so much fun watching that, even if the first half was absolutely awful. And from a tactical aficionado's point of view, so much to talk about. This is going to be a bit of a struggle. I'm going to try and get it done fairly quickly, but honestly, I think I could talk for hours about this match. It was really interesting, really fascinating, and I feel quite sort of what's the word here? Like I feel like relieved. Like some of the things that I've been saying have been proven to be true. But look, it's not about me; it's about the team. So let's get on with the objective analysis and let's look at an absolute epic, another one at St Mary's as we beat Southampton 3-2. That's how the game finished. And if you look at the underlying stats, well, take a look at the XG 3.13. Now, of course, there was a red card in this game, and the game absolutely did swing on that. But actually, I couldn't get the stats for this. But at that point in time, just as we got the penalty, I think our XG was still something like 2.6. So, in general, this was our best attacking display of the entire season. Although it was massively ramped up in the second half. Although even in the first half, we didn't have a bad XG for a Steve Cooper team. I'll come to that in a moment. You can see the attack momentum that Southampton really got out of the traps quickly. They started really well, got into a 2-goal lead. You can see that their second goal maybe came a little bit against the run of play. We finished the half quite strongly with the Bilal El Canoes chance, but we didn't really look in it. Southampton started the second half again pretty strong. But then you'll see at this point in time, we'll get to it. Something happened in the game which turned this game on its head. And look, I really hope that this is a turning point for the manager. A lot of us are negative on him, but you've got to give him a lot of credit for this game. And if he learns the lessons from this game, we could have a brilliant season, in my opinion. So I'm going to talk about that because it's a very interesting game from a tactical perspective. So looking at the starting lineups, he made one change. He took Ayew out of the team, which I think was quite a relief to some people. We do like Ayew, especially as he bagged the winner, but a lot of us don't really think he should be a starter. And in his place came Bilal El Canoes, of course, was one of the big money signings from an attacking point of view, and the Kin and Drewsbury Hall replacement. And he played in a number 10 position, with Buonanotte therefore starting on the right, but drifting in as he does in Cooper's system. Otherwise, it was pretty much as you were. However, I would say that in this game, the big surprise was what a Southampton did. Now, here's where I want to give myself a little bit of credit. In the pre-match preview, even though I showed you that Southampton normally play a 4-2-3-1 with two inverted fullbacks, I did say that in the biggest match of their Russell Martin era so far, the playoff final, they played a 3-5-2. In fact, they played at 3-5-2 against Leeds 3 times, and each time it won. And I said that it's possible that they might go for a 3-5-2 in this game, because if Russell Martin loses it, he might get sacked, which he might do, by the way. Even though I think, as I'll explain a bit later, that I think that would be very unlucky for him if that's the case. So, would they go for it? Well, kind of. They went for a 3-4-3, which I suppose actually makes more sense, given that one of their strikers in Ross Stewart was out injured, and they got the great form of Tyler Diblin, who's come into the team recently and looks a real prospect. He even had good glimpses in this game, I thought. So here's how they lined up. And this was very clever. And I think at the start of the game, I was even saying to some of the boys on the Match Day Live that we do at Blue Tinted Classes, so shout outs to Neil, Locks, and Luke from LCFC Down Under, that this was going to throw a spanner in the works, because basically it was giving us a problem that we had to solve. Now, I actually thought that on paper, with us starting both El Canoes and Buonanotte, that was brilliant, because I was expecting Southampton to sit in a little bit. As shown in the previous slide, against Leeds, they gave Leeds more possession. They were happy to sort of sit back and hit them on transition. So in other words, what Russell Martin is trying to do here is he was trying to do to us what Enzo Maresca did to him twice last season. And what's that? So Enzo Maresca, even though he loves possession, against Southampton, he actually let Southampton have more of the ball. And then he waited for them to make a mistake and then just killed them on the transition. And we scored 9 goals over 2 games, which showed you how effective it was. And so I think Russell Martin deserves a lot of respect, because although, trying to solidify yourself defensively is important, you could argue that why are you having like 5 men back against a team like Leicester? But, if you keep doing the same thing and expect different results, that's the definition of insanity. And he didn't do that. Some other kind of interesting things here is that Kyle Walker-Peters came back into the team, but rather than featuring as one of the wing backs, which you might think he would, he actually played as one of the sort of drifting centre backs on the outside. And that's clever because he's got pace. So that, I believe, was a nod, for example, if we play our dangerous wingers, you've got someone who's a bit faster there to maybe provide cover. The other big change in their head is they brought in a Rebo into the team who doesn't normally start, and he played in the midfield with them to make this 3-4-3 shape. And how did this affect play? Well, let's go into the first half analysis, which was not the best game for us to watch, getting off to the worst possible start. And what I want to call out from the beginning, and again, I have to give Martin credit, is that Southampton started really well, but they started really, really aggressively. In fact, at times, this really felt like a proper blood and thunder. Maybe you could even say a championship game. Look how many yellow cards they picked up very early on. And I actually think they maybe should have got more yellows in this because they were very, very physical with some of our players. And why were they doing that? Well, last season, as I say, what happened is when we played Southampton, we basically waited for them to make a mistake and then we caught them on transition. So if you know that going in, what could you do as a manager to try and prevent that being the case? And one of the things you can do is that if you lose the ball on transition, especially early in the game, is to foul the opposition. Take the tactical foul. Yes, you'll rack up a few yellow cards, but it's better to rack up those yellow cards than going a couple of goals down early and then have the crowd turn on you. So here's an example. As we can see, this is Mateus Fernandes is on the ball, who's drifted inside and he's on the ball right now. And as a result of this sequence, he loses the ball. And the ball ends up with Skip, who drives forward. But what happens? This is Manning, actually. He runs back and he fouls him, takes the yellow early on, but stops the attack in its treads. And they did this a lot. Here's another example. So Buonanotte, who I'll speak about a little bit more in the future, he was one of the best, I think, about using his real physical strength, despite his fairly short stature, to be able to hold off the ball and drag the ball forward and get some progressive passing. But here you can see Kyle Walker-Peters, who's come back to give him some very special treatment. And you can see later on, this is Harwood Bellis, who really goes in for him. He got booked for this one. I mean, this was a bit naughty in my opinion, but I do actually understand what you're going to do it. Again, I watch the matches quite often with Luke, and he's always like, get into them, snap their leg, make them remember who we are. And whilst, look, you don't want to wish anyone injury on a football pitch, the point is like going hard like this, you're trying to sort of make the player feel, oh man, this is not my day, it's not going to happen, and there's no point playing. This guy's got the physical beating of me. So fair play to Buonanotte, even though he was on the receiving end of a lot of physical treatment, he never gave up. And that was important to get us forward. But again, it shows you here, it's already 2-0. So the Southampton game plan was working brilliantly. Yes, they'd racked up all these yellow cards, but in the meantime, they'd managed to get a lead, and that gave them something to protect and hold on to. So it's working brilliantly. You can also see that on top of that, they're also paying special attention to certain players. So last season, our wingers absolutely destroyed Southampton. And in this particular game, of course, we didn't start Fatau, which was as terrible as it sounded, because as we found out later, Fatau was a huge difference maker in this game. But we started with Mavididi, and something that I noticed pretty early on, you can see here, is that two men were looking to chase him. They're happy here for Ndidi to be a bit free and be on the ball. They know that they can't let the winger beat them one-on-one because we've got extremely tricky wingers, and that caused them a lot of problems last season. And here you can see another example that Christensen's on the outside there and potentially can be interlinking with Mavididi to provide an option. But again, look at the defenders. They're both looking at Mavididi. They know that he's the danger man and the guy they got to look after. Right. So Southampton have started aggressive. They're winning the ball back. They've got control of the game. Whilst sort of by the end of the first half, they'd end up having less possession than us. In the first 15 minutes, they had a lot more possession than Leicester did. They were controlling the game and we were playing the game to their tempo. So again, a brilliant setup from Russell Martin. What happened early on is there was a free kick in the middle of the park. Southampton take it quickly and they're trying to catch us on transition. And here we see the first goal. And this is a combination, I believe, of both a sloppy defense, but also, I think, one of the big problems that we've seen with Steve Cooper this season. And that is his system. And how his system works is that we've got JJ ringed here and we've got Buonanotte. Now, Buonanotte starts on the right-hand side, but he drifts inside. And then JJ pushes up to make that outside man on the overlap. The problem is that on a moment of transition, in this case here, because Buonanotte has drifted inside, you can see that he's now behind the ball and he's not on the right-hand side because he's drifted inside. And equally, JJ will then be either caught upfield or he'll be caught most commonly in a position like this. So there's 2 Southampton players here and there's 1 James Justin. What is he going to do? Yes, the other players are sort of close enough to maybe make a challenge, but you'll see that this happens time and time again. So in this game, we've conceded 2 goals and both of them came from the right-hand side. And if you look at all of the games that we've played this season, we concede so many goals from the right-hand side. And it's because of this system issue. And it always happens to us on transition. And it's a big problem. And as we'll see a bit later on, we could do a different system, which could give us more protection. So I think, a few things that the fans are saying is, one, is it JJ's fault defensively? On the second goal, I think he can do better, but most of the time, it's not really his fault. It's a factor that you can't be in 2 places at once. And so that leads people onto saying, well, okay, what if we put Ricardo into the team? But my point is, even if you put Ricardo into the team, these issues will still happen. In fact, you might get even worse issues than this, because at the moment, JJ has covered the most distance of any Leicester player so far this season, which is understandable because he's having to essentially play 2 positions. So that's not going to fix it either. It really is a system-wide issue on transition when we lose the ball and the other team are attacking us quickly. So playing this on a little bit further, what then to happen in these situations, then Fass will come out to back up JJ if he's caught in this sort of position. And actually here, we're reasonably well set defensively. But what ends up here is that Cameron Archer, who Okoli should be marshalling, peels off him, finds himself in some space and ends up scoring. Now, we can see that Christensen's also got a bit of an eye on him here, but I'm not going to call out Christensen for being bad defensively here. Although in the end, he actually goes in to try and make a challenge. The reason why I'm not going to be critical of Christensen is because he's got to block the cross if it comes to his man that he's got to be marking, which is Tyler Dibling. So this has come off Archer. It's gone to the back of the net. I think this is 6 minutes into the game and Southampton have got the perfect start. They're 1-0 up. So that's pretty bad. But of course, it got worse. Actually, I have to say that after Southampton scored, we got into the game quite well. And although the game kind of got a little bit sort of scrappy, we were having more of possession. We were knocking it around. We looked like the more comfortable team. But once again, sort of a bit against the run of play on transition, we get caught out and it's 2-0 to Southampton. And this, I think, is a slightly different issue. And this is, I think, is because the system change that Southampton did meant that our players weren't familiar with who needs to be covering where. So here again, I've got JJ up against one of the wingers here, and it's 1-on-1. And he gets beaten for the ball. This is Walker Peters, actually. So he's pushed right up for our Walker Peters. And now he's going to move in and he's going to try and cut the ball back to Joe Aribo. And what are the issues here? Well, there's many issues here. What I hate now about this defensive setup is, look, Walker Peters could cut the ball back to Manning, who's completely free. You've got Tyler Dibling on the far post, who's also free. And something in the pre-match analysis we pointed out is that Southampton, because they commit a lot of people forward, and look, they've got 5 men in the box here, quite often this player will cross to the back post player who will be free for an easy tap-in. And if that wasn't worse bad enough, who's picking up Joe Aribo? Now, he's from midfield. It probably should be Skip. What's Ndidi doing? Ndidi's just looking. And look, I don't think it's necessarily a case of the players losing their man. I think it's a case of these players don't understand who they were supposed to pick up. So I think what you've got to do as a coach or manager here is that once you recognize the shape that Southampton are using, is you've got to bark your instructions onto the pitch and say, you're on him when we're caught on transition. Now, if it's in the first couple of minutes of the game, that's a bit different. But honestly, you could see the shape that Southampton were using after 3 or 4 minutes, and they scored at minute 6. So there was time to get these instructions across. And so I feel this is again a bit sloppy. I've noticed that Cooper afterwards has said, look, we could do a bit better on the goals, and they were sloppy, and I think kind of criticizing more individual player error rather than systemic. And I think he does have a point. But I do also think that the system has proven time and time again that we're weak down the right-hand side. Like JJ's caught out again here. And I also think he's got to take a bit more accountability on getting those instructions across to the pitch. Or if it's not him, who's his defensive coach? Because someone's got to sort that out. As I say here, the fact that there's 3 men free and one ends up receiving the ball totally unmanned to put it into the back of the net is kind of reason for that. So we're 2-0 down. There's a pretty funny picture of Steve Cooper because he kind of looks a bit bamboozled to me. Or maybe it's just his regular game face. But suffice to say, he was probably feeling, oh, God, what is going to happen here? And, you know, to be honest, Southampton did have some other chances and maybe could even have scored some more. So we were riding our luck a little bit. Now, we're 2-0 down. Can we make something ourselves? Are we going to create a threat? Now, I've put here a lack of threat, but I think that's been a bit unfair. I think we did have some sort of half decent play, but we definitely weren't as threatening as we would be in the second half, which we'll come to in a moment. What were we trying to do? If you look at the stats here, you can see we had 0.8 XG. Now, that's not much, but I can tell you this is actually more XG than we've had in entire matches before, believe it or not, under Cooper. But you can see that Southampton here are 1.6. So this is the first half, and they well deserved their lead. So, yeah, I think this is something that, well, to be fair to Cooper, if we were going to keep on going with this, to be honest with you, I thought a 2-0 the game was over because Steve Cooper, the way that he plays, can you really see us scoring 3 goals in one half, especially if we're down 2? It felt a little bit like this. Now, this was before we got to half time, we made some changes, but it was going to require something radical to make a change. In the first half, the few times that we did look good going forwards were for a number of reasons. One, I want to highlight Facundo Buonanotte. I think every Leicester fan is absolutely in love with him. He's a brilliant player. I think he's going to go for a title club at some point. He honestly looks that good to me. He receives the ball here. He's under pressure. You can literally see, it's hard to see here, but the Southampton players kind of got their arms around him. They're trying to really stop him playing. But he manages to spin, pick himself up the floor and drives forward. And look how much distance he covers. And off the end of this sequence, he actually gets the ball into Vardy. Vardy has a shot. He did this time and time again. Absolutely brilliant player. And despite the physical treatment that he received time and time again, he never let it get to him. And he just kept going on and on and on. I think this is number 11, El Canouse, who came into the game as it sort of kept going on. But he should be looking at Buonanotte and trying to learn as much as possible. I'm really impressed with this Buonanotte. I keep saying it. I can't believe Brighton let him go. But he is a top player. He can create. He's good at tackling. He can hold up the ball. He's a team player. Very good player. So that was one thing we tried to do. On occasion as well, under this system, what tends to happen is that when we attack, because we don't have 2 wingers, we only have 1, which often drifts inside. It means that a lot of our threat comes from our fullbacks. And this is something I've been very critical of Leicester and the Cooper system throughout the season. So I tried to look through the entire match and I tried to set myself a challenge. How many times did Victor Christensen get a cross in that was threatening in the game? And the answer was 1. And this is the one. Now, to be fair, this is a nice early cross. Vardy gets to it and heads it over. But is that as good as then having 2 attacking wingers on both sides, who can attack their man one-on-one and create more? And as we'd see in the second half, the wingers is by far the more effective option. What Cooper wants us to do is a bit more like this. And to be fair, this almost led to a goal. So here I'm combining 3 players. We've got Mavididi, who's on the ball, and he's drifted inside. You've got Christensen, who's offering himself on the overlap down the wing. And you've got Bilal El Canouse, who's one of the box crashers, or the 10, who's drifted in as well. So these guys could create a triangle between themselves, and you're giving Southampton some problems. What are you going to do? Which one of these players are you going to handle? Now, Mavididi doesn't play it to Christensen, but in the end, it does end up at his feet. And Christensen spots a good pass and plays it into El Canouse. El Canouse does a really nice move. He receives the ball on the turn, spins, pulls a shot away, and goes for the corner. And he is so unlucky. It comes off the inside of the post, but doesn't go in. Deserved the goal, in my opinion. Brilliant move. Like I say, he came into the game as it kept going on. He would eventually be substituted, but I thought this was quite a promising performance from him. And well, it'll be interesting to see if he keeps his spot in the next game. But he showed more of what we were expecting in this match. Deserved a bit better. And it was exciting to see him start to sort of pull the strings for Leicester in midfield. So that's the end of the first half. And, 2-0 down. It couldn't really have gone much worse, if we're being honest. The way it was going, though, I felt like, actually, I said that the game was probably over, but I felt like we may get a goal. It didn't look like we were completely dead and buried. But if we were going to get something, we needed to be bold and we needed to be brave. And those are 2 words that you wouldn't normally associate with Steve Cooper. Looking at the stats, though, this second half is one for the ages. And I will admit that actually, after the game was over in the evening, I managed to get the full match again. And I watched it again, start to finish, with the old popcorn out, having my dinner. So yes, that's sort of person I am. But I just really enjoyed this second half so much. It was so exciting to see. It was a throwback to all the best things that Leicester did last season. And arguably, I think we even look better at times, maybe because we've got better people in the team right now. So as you can see in the second half, the XG goes up by 2.34. So combining for over 3 big chances, way more shots. Funny enough, actually, our keeper still had to make quite a few saves on transition, probably through Mads Manson having to save from Wout Fast, which I haven't put in his analysis video, but that was a bit of a crazy one. Out past the team. And look, yes, they were down to 10 men, but you can see that Southampton had 0 big chances compared to our 3 big ones. So, we really turned it on in the second half. And here's the match momentum. And you can really see that although Southampton actually did start quite strongly in that second half too, there was a turning point. And that turning point was when a certain substitute was made. And from that point on, it was pretty much all us. So something that I've been critical of Steve Cooper for all season long is where are the substitutes and not understanding the game state and making the right changes at the right time to respond to what's going on. But for once, this slide is out of date. I've got to put the cross for it because this time round, he made the right substitutes. Go on, Cooper. Go on. And yeah, have some happiness. Look at the team. Look at Mavadidi in the background. Absolutely loving it when IU bangs in the winner. Why not? Yeah, I'll give you the credit where it's deserved. Because to come from 2 down to win the game and to keep going and win it on the last kick, great time to be a fan. And that actually showed that you've got something. So more of this, please. Here are the subs that he made, and you can see, really combining the two, how Southampton, all of their subs actually probably made the team worse, whereas all of our subs really had a high impact. Now, coming back to Southampton's strategy, why did they have to make subs? They had to make subs for a couple of reasons. One was obviously because of the red card, and you can see that most of their subs come after that. But even if they didn't get the red card, a lot of their team were on yellows because of their aggressive techniques that they'd used earlier in the game. I'm actually quite controversially going to say that I think even if Ryan Fraser wasn't sent off, it would still have been 2-2. And I think we would have still won the game. That's my honest opinion. I think the way that the flow of the game was going and the system that we were using, that they looked like a team that was going to concede the third regardless. Of course, that's very subjective for me to say. A bit hard to say from a statistics point of view. But our changes really fundamentally changed the game. And what were those changes? So the first one was bringing on the return of Harry Winks. And Harry Winks, what does he do? He's a bit of a quarterback. So what you'd see very early on, he was really eager. I've got to give him a lot of praise. For someone who was dropped from the team, he really wanted to take accountability and responsibility, was asking for the ball. He was demanding it from Caleb Okoli, telling him where to pass it and when to pass it sometimes. And when he got on the ball, he was always looking to find the passes and play in his teammates who were in attacking progressive positions. Here he plays it into Buonanotte, and Buonanotte would drive in and have a great shot. But he was doing this all throughout the game, and he had a really, really good game. But that was a good sub. But to be honest with you, when Winks came on, Southampton still looked comfortable. We weren't really creating that many crazy chances, although Vardy did have a good effort too. But Southampton, as you can see, started the half stronger, and we needed to make another change. And it's a fair play to Cooper, because on 58 minutes, so not even waiting until minute 60, he made another change. And what change did he make? Well, I'm going to bring this up because this is something that I've put in these analysis videos quite a few times. And this was my suggestion on how we could fix things. And basically what I've been saying all along is that Steve Cooper's system is fundamentally wrong, and it's not getting the best out of our team. He's tried to do the same 3-2-5 shape as Enzo Maresca did, but the way that he's achieved it hasn't worked out. And what I've said he needs to do is he needs to put on 2 out-and-out wingers. That was the strength from our team last season. Steffi Mavadidi, Abdul Fatawu. Then he needs to have 2 box crashers, which could be Ndidi, who played it last season, and Buonanotte. And he needs to move Justin back, rather than being a raiding fullback, to being one of the outside centre-backs. Now, this was my suggestion to do earlier in the season. So you can see this is not what Cooper did. I'm going to come to what he did in a moment. But you can still see that, like, what I'm getting at here in terms of the way that we wanted to play. What he did instead then is he brought, well, first and foremost, he brings on Fatawu. So you can see 58 minutes. And the big changes is he takes off Christensen and he puts on the star man. And I love this. Look at his face at the end of the game. And that's the Fatawu that we want to see. Fatawu! Running down the wing, making the Leicester sing. And he really did that. And I don't know if you saw Match of the Day, but he really got a high amount of praise, and deservedly so. So the change made is Christensen comes off, and we switch to this system. And it's similar to what I showed, but actually, I would say even more aggressive, which I really like, actually. So Justin actually played on the left-hand side. Now, that's very interesting, I have to say, because there was a rumor going around recently that Justin even says that he would prefer to play on the left-hand side, and he considers himself to be more of a left back than a right back. Now, that's very interesting because I think a big comment here is this something that Steve Cooper planned or was he bullied into it from the players? Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't think it matters either way. Even if he was bullied into it, he's made the changes and the changes worked amazingly. So I would like to see him keep doing it. But it is interesting that he was moved over to the left-hand side because Okoli has played on the left-hand side as centre-backs before. And instead, Okoli was basically playing the Vestergaard role here in the middle. So now you've got Fatau and Mavadidi on. You've got now the two exciting attacking midfielders, El Canous and Bonanotte, and Ndidi joins Winks here in the middle in a double pivot. So it's not quite the inverted fullback because neither Winks nor Ndidi is an inverted fullback, but essentially we are playing that system. And on the defensive phase, it would, I guess, mean that maybe Ndidi could go back into the right back position if needed. And this is the change that it made. This was quite late on, but I have to give credit to Luke for this. He goes, please, can you take a picture of this of the play right now, which I did. And the point he's making is this is the perfect Enzo shape. So another thing that I've been mentioning all season long is that when we attack, we generally attack with just 4 players. But now, because we had to go for it, and this is great because this is still 2-2. Of course, they've got the red card, but we're still trying to get something out of the game. And you can see that we're attacking with 5 men. So you've got both wingers. You've got Vardy here playing as the false 9, and you've got 2 box crashing midfielders. At this point, Ayew has come on for El Canous, but otherwise it's as you were. And here you can see the double pivot back there. Harry Winks and Wilfred Ndidi, and they're all attacking together. And so this is really, really offensive, right, when you're playing this way. It gives you a chance to score. And we'll come to that because this actually proves to be a big difference maker for us. And it's the thing that I want to see going forward because attacking with 5 is not going to improve your creative output, but in some ways, the best form of defense is actually to attack because if you lose the ball, it actually gives you more players to press and retrieve the ball. And I'll have some examples for that in a moment. Now, what I will say, just to be fair, and I want it to be objective here, is that why would you not play that system then or not have 2 wingers? And one of the reasons why you might not do it is what about ourselves when we get caught on transition? So here you can see this is still at 2-0. So this is before Fatau has really started to work his magic. And Southampton have an attacking play here. And you can see that Fatau here, he's got someone behind him and the ball is going to get played into this channel. And the issue here, you could say, is that, well, if he's playing in this position, you know, are we a bit weaker? Because wingers don't tend to be as good defensively as fullbacks and they might not be used to it. Now, we all know that that's not true because Fatau showed all our season that he's got really good defensive and tackling stats. But like I say, just purely on paper, I can somewhat understand why some managers would prefer to go the other way. As it stands, though, the ball comes to him. Fatau is still chasing, and the ball's going to get played in here. But you can see how we're then supposed to cover. So Fast is going to be here to try and block the ball coming across, and Okoli's there to try and maybe beat this Cameron Archer and prevent him getting the ball. Now, as it happens, Archer did manage to get the shot away, but it wasn't the best, and he was kind of restricted. So it was a fairly easy cleanup from Mads Manson. But it does show you that, of course, if you're going to attack with 5 people, it means you got 1 person less back when defending. So it could cause you some problems on the transition. But as I say, given that we are supposed to be attacking or pushing the fullback forwards anyway, I'm not really buying that argument. And a 5-man attack is way worth its weight in gold compared to some of the problems that it will have. So let's concentrate on the good stuff. Now we've got the 5 men attacking, who again are ringed here. How are we going to make the best of it? So here I've got Winks on the ball and he's playing as quarterback. And this is where Winks is really in his pomp. So he's spotting the ball to play and he's going to play this lovely ball here into the outside winger position. Now, in the previous system, this would probably be Justin, although would it be Justin? We wouldn't have this many people going forward. So probably Justin wouldn't even be appearing here. He'd be holding back. But in this case, it goes to Fatau. And Fatau in this position, even if he's got 2 men on him, look again, even though, you know, Southampton, they know all about Fatau and they're not going to let him have an easy time. But Fatau is too good for them. And when he's got the ball, there's multiple things he could do. But one of the best moves that we would do time and again every season is that when he would receive the ball, one of the box crashers, in this case, it's actually El Canous, which is showing that he's already learning the system. He can make the run into this half space, we call it here. And then he can either have a shot or cross it back or pull it back. And of course, if he goes that way, Fatau can either go on the outside or he can cut in on the inside. So it gives you a lot of option. Or he can do another thing, which is what he actually does in another move, is he gets the ball and he actually drives down the wing and then he plays the ball across here. And then what's happening at the same time, actually, this is part of the same move because El Canous has come here, is Buonanotte now, who's also a free man. He's going to box crash and he's going to get to the ball. So Fatawu drives down the wing, beats his men, puts the cross away, and Buonanotte slots it in for 2-1. And all of a sudden, it's game on. And this is 64 minutes. And I don't think anyone believed me, but I promise you, when we were watching the game together, I said to the guys, I think we're going to win the game. And they were like, how? Why? And it's like, this system is working. And if we're playing the two-winger system, I can tell you, Southampton are terrified. A lot of their team are on yellows. The crowd's going to get against them. And I genuinely think we've got a big chance of winning this game. I think we're going to do it. And yeah, vintage Fatawu comes back into the game and is absolutely destroying him. So as pointed out, now he's got the ball here. He's shown that he can go down the wing and attack them down that side to put the cross, but he can also cut back inside. And again, you've got the box crasher who can come in here to again cause additional problems. And look, if the box crasher moves in this field, then the defender that's with him is going to be moved out of the way, making this cutting even more effective. So Fatawu cuts in and goes for an absolutely audacious effort. You know the ones. And of course, what is the Fatawu special is he normally hits the woodwork rather than it going in. Look, give him the games as we saw at the back end of last season, and they'll start going in the back of the net. But this was a fantastic effort. Cannons off the upright and comes out. So we almost score from that. But what I really like about this move and why I feel that this system works so well is even though we didn't score from this, as part of the same move, the ball is recycled and now it comes back to Mavididi. And so now Mavididi, here's another thing that the system allows you to do, is that we would quite often have one winger play the ball all the way across to try and hit the other winger. We did this quite a lot last time this season. So Mavididi gets the ball and he immediately knows where to play the ball and he's looking for Fatawu. Fatawu tries to head it in. It comes back. It ends up coming to Vardy. Vardy should score, but he's pulled back by Ryan Fraser and it's a penalty and it's a red card. And it becomes 2-2 as a result of that. Now, should it have been a red card? I think under the interpretation of the rules, yes, because he's prevented a clear and obvious goal scoring chance and he's done it with serious foul play. You do have the double jeopardy rule in place here. So maybe you could see it as a bit hard done by, but I think it is a penalty. And I think in this example, actually, the learning is you should probably just let the player score, to be honest with you. I don't think it's worth taking a risk. Although, as we'll come to a bit later, maybe we should have conceded a penalty too, and we got away with it. Anyway, thanks to this fantastic move and Fatawu come onto the pitch, he's already got an assist and essentially won the penalty for Vardy there, even if Vardy wins it himself. Vardy sticks it away and it's 2-2. And now it really is game on. But one thing I've got to say, what I really like, and I think that last season really helped us with this, is even though it was 2-2, we didn't force things. I think credit to Cooper as well. At 2-2, he maybe could have thought, you know what, I've come back from 2-0 down, so I'm just going to sit on it. Right? Let's just see the game out 2-2. It's a good point. In the post-match, I can be like, well, you know, we started badly, but we got a point. Aren't I good? But fair play to him. He kept going for it. He did take Mavididi off, but he put on Bobby Reid, and he had Bobby Reid still play as a winger. He took off Bilal El Khanous, but he had Jordan Ayew who come on, play as one of the box crashers. So he maintained the same system throughout. And here you can see again in this attack that there are 5 men forward. And again, 5 is the magic number. Most teams are going to defend in a 4-4-2 shape. And there you can see the 4 in the back there, which means you've got more chance of finding that extra man. Risk versus reward. So in this particular sequence, the balls ended up with Bobby Reid. He actually tried to shoot but miscontrolled it, and it ends up at Buonanotte. And Buonanotte hits a shot, and it just goes narrowly wide. And I was like, oh, I can't believe it. That was the chance. I knew we'd get one massive opportunity, and I was confident we would take it. And, you know, it fell even to Buonanotte, who's been on fire recently. He's the guy you'd want it to fall to, but he couldn't put it in the back of the net. And I was like, damn. 2-2. You would have still taken it at halftime. Of course you would have, right? And I still felt quite proud of the team that they were keeping to that patient approach rather than trying to force it, as Enzo taught them. And it showed you that I think his teachings really, you know, struck a chord with a lot of the players. But luckily for us, you know, something else would happen. I just want to say as well, though, that another thing that was really nice to see. Now, fair play, Southampton are down to 10 men here, so it's very easy to point this out. But look at how we're playing in the half now under this system. Because we've got 5 men forwards, it really puts teams into more of a defensive mindset. They're a bit scared of pushing men forward because you're leaving a lot of men behind you. So they start retreating. And that means that Okoli and Fass, who are developing quite the partnership, can push right up again. And in fact, here you can see JJ's pushed right up there as well. So they're being really, really aggressive here, trying to get that win. Really good to see. And again, they're passing it between themselves. They're not rushing things. They're trying to find the right ball and the right chance. They know it will come. Enzo's taught them well, and they'll be able to get that goal if that opportunity comes. And we would get a goal, and we'd get a goal with the very last kick of the game with a brilliant set piece. And set pieces are something that we've got to call out. I was a bit critical in the Bournemouth game because I felt we got away with it. But you know what? Maybe this video made its way to this next person, because this person, Andrew Hughes, I think you could make an argument to say that he is actually low-key our best signing of the season. Why? So he was a set pieces coach, and he last season was at Norwich. And since he's come to Leicester, look at how much more effective we are when we're taking offensive set pieces. We very rarely use the same one. There's always something fairly inventive. And if we don't score, you can see in your head, you're like, do you know what? I can see what we were trying to do there, and I could see us scoring from it. And as a result, you can see that as it stands, Leicester, we are joint top in terms of goals scored from set pieces. And that's great to see. Even better, though, you can see that so far this season, we've only conceded 1 goal in set pieces against us. And that was in the 92nd minute against Arsenal. That was really unfortunate. There was a free man that was picked up as they kept pushing men forward, and it was an own goal ultimately. So other than that, we're both good offensively and good defensively. And look at Southampton and Wolves. Both of these teams are now 19th and 20th respectively. And look at how many goals they've conceded. So it goes to show you that hiring a set piece coach, this could mean the difference between staying up and going down. This guy, give him a new contract. He's really pulling off some major miracles, I think. And, you know, you might say, okay, but that is a bit early in the season. Don't get too carried away in it. And that's fair enough, right? It could start getting worse over time. But I wanted to show you some stats from other seasons to put it into perspective. So the season that we went down, we only scored 9 goals from set pieces. I should clarify that with set pieces, a lot of you might think, hang on a minute, I don't even remember us scoring 9 goals from set pieces last season. But what I will say is it doesn't just take into account free kicks and corners. It also takes into account throw-ins. And sometimes the ball isn't going to be just like you throw it to someone and they head it in. It's going to be, it's thrown to someone, you put 3 or 4 passes together, and then it goes into the back of the net. But that is still called a set piece goal because fundamentally you can still do clever things off the set pieces that way. There is also statistics saying that actually when you have a throw in, is actually you're quite likely to concede because one of your guys is actually on the sideline throwing a ball in. So that's an interesting thing for you. And Arsene Wenger has even suggested that maybe they won't have throw-ins in the future. They might go for kick-ins, believe it or not, as crazy as that sounds, because of that reason, that they don't want to penalise the offensive team. Anyway, point here is that in the relegation season, we only scored 9. So we're almost halfway to this total already, despite only having played 8 games, sorry. And you can see that in terms of goals against, we conceded 13 in the season that we went down. Now, that surprised me that we weren't number 1, given, you know, that we got relegated and Bournemouth, who, you know, actually stayed up pretty comfortably and conceded so many more. But point is, we were still one of the top 4 worst teams for it, and therefore maybe not a surprise why we got relegated. So again, if we can stop that, actually, I've got to say, we've got the own goals here, which we know is the Wout Fast column, which makes me laugh. But yeah, I'm just pointing out again that your ability to defend set pieces is absolutely huge and can make a huge difference to your final league position. Now, how about last year? So Enzo Maresca is a coach that I really admire. I think he's a top coach. I think he's proving it at Chelsea right now. But if you look here, you can see that in terms of set pieces, we were nothing special. We were bang middle of the table. And I would say that's pretty poor from us, given that you can probably expect that we had more opportunities to take set pieces than other teams because we were on the attack and front foot so much. So here you can see we only scored 11 set piece goals last time round. And here's Norwich up in 3rd position, 18. That's where Andrew Hughes was playing at the time, or coaching at the time. And then in terms of against, actually, we were pretty bad in terms of giving goals away on set pieces because you can see that we conceded 13, which was in the top 8. Rotherham, of course, got relegated. QPR just about stayed up. Blackburn just about stayed up. But you can see that a lot of these teams were struggling. So, again, showing you the importance of those set pieces. So, speaking about set pieces and the creativity from them, Here it is, 98th minute. There was only supposed to be 7 minutes of stoppage time, but Southampton were doing a bit of time wasting, came back to bite them, and Winks is on the corner. And what I find really interesting is that you can tell this was rehearsed because all our players went right up here into the mixer. And what's really clever about this is that meant that Southampton had to defend really, really deep. Normally, when you take set pieces, our players would be a bit further out here, and then as the ball comes in, they would time their run to run in and try and meet the header on the run. But this is deliberate. They've gone there to mean that there's a lot of space here. And in this view, you might think, oh, well, Southampton aren't too badly set up here. But of course, that's because we've lured them into a trap with the creative set piece. Winks is going to have the audacity to play that ball across. And where's he got it to? Here we go. There's two men here. And you know what? This is what I think is so genius about this set piece. It's not just we had one man free, we had two. So on paper, this could have been Fatawu to hit with his left foot, or it could have been Ayew. And I'm guessing that they did this because they might have thought that one of the Southampton players might have come to him. So he's going to double our chances of someone getting onto the ball. Anyway, at the end of the day, the ball makes its way to Jordan Ayew. Boom, hits it with his right foot. It's not the cleanest contact, but it's good enough and beats the keeper and it goes in. And here was a shot that I found on the official website. And wow, I love this. This is definitely my work here is done. Take some of that. And that concluded an absolutely epic game. I've got to say, I absolutely lost it. Going mad, running around the room like a lunatic. It was brilliant. And the reason I think it was so good is just that we had to attack. We went for it. We didn't stop. We kept the same principles in being patient, trying to attack, playing football the right way, and it worked. And you can't say fairer than that. I will say, look, that I want to be impartial here on this channel. I've said that many times. So I think if you're a Saints fan watching this, you're going to be like, you guys absolutely got away with it. You didn't deserve to win. Maybe didn't even deserve to draw. You might even have a point on that, to be totally fair with you. But look, you got to take your chances when they come. But I think to be fair, Southampton would have probably said this is a penalty. Jordan Ayew here clearly pulling Onuachu's shirt, and he did. And to be honest with you, I'm surprised that VAR didn't pick that up. It does kind of pull one rule for one rule for the other. So I think we were very fortunate to get away with that one. And I will say that although they didn't have a big chance, there was an unbelievable sort of block that Wout Faes made deep into the game. So it's a 2-2. And I have to say, at this point, although I thought we could still go and win it, I could even have seen it being a 3-3 because the more that you push up, of course, it's inevitable that there's going to be like some room left at the back. So what happens here is Suleiman has come onto the pitch. It's an aerial ball played to him. He heads it into the space behind him, and Onuachu is going to run onto it. He gets onto it, and Faes here has got to cover, and Faes makes an absolutely look at that, jumping off the ground, throwing everything at it to block the ball, and he does, and he sees it out and he protects the lead. So that was absolutely brilliant from Faes. And you know, I didn't have it in the analysis, but there was a point where Wout Faes almost scored an epic own goal with a tremendous backheader that Mad saved. But you've seen that Faes this season. I have to give him a lot of respect. He seems to be making a big difference. It seems now he's got a bit more experience with the English game. He seems a lot better player than he was the first season that we signed him. And there we go. We end it with 3-2 and Jordan Ayew, aka Steve Cooper's love child, being a winner, and we love it. We were joking. I don't even care if it's Bobby. We don't care who gets the win, we just want to see someone get it. And I was quite glad that Jordan Ayew got it, and it was lovely to see him run along to the fans and celebrate. It was funny how after the game he didn't really seem that emotional. Maybe because he's just more of a kind of chilled out individual. But it was brilliant to see. Want to call out some key players. So who was the man of the match? I gave it to Fatawu, but I think you could equally give it to Buonanotte. Both these players, they, you know, created so many big chances and key passes. I think, you know, Buonanotte, the thing that impressed me is he would get the ball, and despite being under pressure, he would drive forwards of the ball, keep it on him. This was actually the first game, I believe, that he played the full 90 minutes. And I hope he continues to do so. And I think, like everyone's saying, is we've got to put a bid for him in January. I'll be honest with you. I think what he's showing is that, like, if I was one of the top 4 teams, I would be signing this player. Absolutely. If you can get him for 40 to 50 million, he's absolutely worth it. So enjoy him while you can get him, or see him at the club, but he's a top player. But Fatawu was a difference maker, and that will kind of play into my sort of points at the end. So what are my closing thoughts? Let's look at the match ratings first and foremost. You can see over here that Buonanotte got the technical man of the match, but you can see we had pretty strong ratings. Mads, again, very high rating, given that, we won the game, but it shows you just how important he is. But yeah, I think the story is look at the subs. The subs came on, certainly these first three, and they changed the game. Whereas Southampton, the red card, of course, absolutely changed the game. And Fraser himself was a substitute, bit unfortunate. But after that point on, because they were against it and having to play catch up, they never looked in it. And look, I will say as well that it's a slightly unfair that they do not have the squad that we do. And I'm going to say this again, is that a lot of people, I guess the Saints fans themselves, are pretty anti Russell Martin, but I think that he tactically outdid Cooper, and he forced Cooper to do something that I don't think he wanted to do, which is to go to the 5-man attack. But luckily he got away with it. I actually think that if you look at it, given that Russell Martin schooled him for pretty much 60 minutes of the game, that Martin deserved to get at minimum a point from this, and maybe shows that he's the better coach overall. But at the end of the day, life doesn't sometimes give you what you want. So it'll be interesting to see if they stick with him or not. I do think for them that this system shows some promise, though. Will it work against the other teams? I'm not sure. But I think they do need to look at their defending. But maybe they just don't have good enough players in their squads to really compete in the Premier League. That's what I actually suspect. I think they might have the weakest squad overall, maybe even weaker than Ipswich, which is saying something. My match thoughts. We are the one half warriors. It seems like every match we play now, we do one half where we're good and one half where we're shocking. It was the same against Bournemouth. It was the same against Palace. Same against Spurs. When forget even having two halves, could we even get to 60 minutes of playing good football? Let's see. As mentioned there, I think Russell Martin totally outdid Cooper for 60 minutes, and Cooper often looked lost. But I will give him a lot of praise. I'm not going to be negative, right? At the end of the day, for you to achieve that, the manager's made the key decisions. He's been ballsy. He's taken off the left back after 58 minutes. He's gone to the attacking five. He stuck to it throughout. He kept both the wingers on. Even then, when one winger was removed, he had another winger come on, and it worked, and we got the winner, and amazing. And it was the most creative and most offensive we've looked, and that's even before we got the second goal on a penalty and the red card. Now, the big question will be, will Steve Cooper keep the system? Hard to say. We'll find out against Forest. I think he's going to be in an interesting dilemma because Fatawu played so well in this game that if he doesn't start him in the next one, he's going to look idiotic. So do you know what I think he might do? I think he's going to bench Mavididi, and I think he's going to play Fatawu instead, which is still the same problem, but just putting it on the other side. And we started the season like that, and it also didn't work. The answer, I'm going to say again, is to have both the wingers in the team at the same time, right? If he actually does that, then I want to eat my words. That would be absolutely amazing if he does it. What I will say, though, is that because this has worked once, even if he doesn't start this way, he will absolutely be thinking about it in the back of his head, which means the next time we go behind, if we go behind again with half an hour to go, he's absolutely going to go to the system, in my opinion. And at least that's a start. I have said a few times that the only time I could really see Steve Cooper going back to the Enzo way is if he was basically in last chance saloon, and he had to do it because otherwise he was going to get sacked, so he might as well do what the players want him to do. Now, it's interesting that he did that yesterday, because does that imply that he may well have got the sack if we'd have lost that game 2-0? I don't really know, but as we'll get to in a moment with the table, it's pretty incredible, because it actually means that now there's a huge gap between us and Southampton, and this could define the season. So I really hope that Cooper leans into that system, because the thing is even people like Luke and Locks, who really don't like Steve Cooper, they don't want to dislike him. They want to like him. And they will like him if he plays the same sort of attacking, front-footed football that we played last season and goes for it. Now, some people might even want Ricardo in the team. And listen, I think Ricardo should be in the team in some capacity. But you know what? If he plays that particular system with the two wingers, I think it's less of an issue if Ricardo's in or out of the team, because we've got very good options in the double pivot, although I think it would be better with him in there. So will he keep it? We will find out. And yet, finally, as I put here, we've got to sign Buonanotte, man. We've got to sign him, because I feel like even if we probably have to break the club record to get him, but I feel like even if you do it, you're going to sell him for more money. And he looks happy to be at Leicester. He's going to attract suitors, though. Absolutely. Wouldn't blame him. I don't think he will go back to Brighton. I just sadly don't think he'll stay at Leicester either. A bit unfortunate. So just want to quickly go through the other results. As we can see here, other big result at the bottom of the table was Ipswich lost to Everton. Fair play to Bournemouth. They got a win against Arsenal. Of course, Arsenal were 10 men after just half an hour. But what that really means is this of the table. Assuming that Wolves are not going to get anything from Man City, you can see here that we've now got an 8-point gap between two teams already. And to be honest with you, the Saints aren't going to catch us now. I can say that for certain. Wolves, I don't know, but I find it interesting that they didn't sack their manager during the international break. I was expecting it, and I think that they can't afford to sack Gary O'Neill. So I've got a feeling that that might already be two teams that can't catch us. We've got Ipswich coming up soon. If we were to beat them, oh man, it's starting to look good. Palace are the team that I think will get out of trouble. And I think Everton, you've got to give them a lot of respect. You know, they lost 2 games after being 2-0 up. But since then, the Sean Dyche effect, that guy, he knows how to get through the Premier League. Big credit to him, because I think their squad is pretty honking, to be honest with you. That Ilman NDI that they signed, I think looks like a great player. But otherwise, for him to be getting results of that squad, I think is actually impressive, especially to have the same amount of points as West Ham. And look at us. I mean, wow. Okay, Bournemouth now have overtaken us, but we're above West Ham. That's pretty impressive, because if you look at who they've signed in in the summer, a pretty insane window that they had. So we're doing all right. And yep, I made this thing a while ago with the next 5 games, and now we've actually played all of these 5. And in total, we actually managed to get 8 points out of, well, I've put 12 out of 15. Oops, math's not my strong point, clearly. I wanted to get 9. I was really hoping, I guess, that we could win 3. But you know what? In the end of the day, because I guess we thought that we wanted to beat Everton, and we probably thought we were not going to beat Bournemouth. But wow, I mean, in the end, 8 points out of those 15, given one of those were Arsenal, it's pretty good. It's pretty good form, I would say. So now I've got a new one. So here's for the next 5 that we're going to play. Now, here's an interesting batch. The first 2 are absolutely crucial. Forest, I think, is a challenging game, but we've got them at home. We've got them under the lights on Sky Sports on a Friday night, and we've just found out that attacking with 5 works. Could be an interesting one. I'm feeling more enthusiastic about that game than I did before. Well, the second half against Southampton, that's for sure. Ipswich is the next one. Now, that's huge. The way that it's going, I'm not even sure we need to beat them. But if we can get at least a point, it's going to maintain a big gap between the two teams. But if we could beat them, oh my goodness. If we beat them, then I think you can... Oh, we're almost not going to be in a relegation fight. That'd be unbelievable, especially that we know that PSR, as far as we know, isn't going to catch us. But don't want to get too carried away. After that, we've got Man United. We're actually playing them in the Cup as well before this game. So we're playing them twice in quick succession. We've got Chelsea. I think Maresca will probably score us. Then we've got Brentford. That one, not sure what will happen there. And I think we need to see where the team is at that point in time. But I mean, I don't think it's impossible that we could get something there. But yeah, these first 2 are absolutely crucial. If I'm honest, out of these 5, I think if we got 5 points, that would probably be a good return, because it's quite hard fixtures. Maybe we could even get a bit more. I know Man United aren't in the best form, but we don't have a good record at playing them at Old Trafford. I'd love to see that change, though, because they're really poor at the moment. So that is pretty much it, except there's going to be one more thing, which is a little Brucey bonus that I'm going to try for the first time ever. I'm going to try and use tactical board here. So finally, just before I end, I want to explain something, and I'm going to try and do a better job of this in the future, but hopefully this can give you one of the ideas. So I keep speaking throughout the various analysis that I do about the system that we use and why I think the system is quite vulnerable. Now, what I've got lined up here is their Enzo system, you could call it, or the system that we played after 64 minutes yesterday. So you got Fatawu here, and he's on the ball. You've got Buonanotte, Vardy, El Kanous, Mavididi. You've got the double pivot, and then you've got the back 3. And what's my point here? So normally, the way that a team will defend is they'll have 2-on-1 versus Fatawu. And I showed that in some of the clips actually earlier. And what actually happens is that most teams will then leave the opposite winger free. And you might think, well, that's a bit weird. But the reason why teams will do that is because if you are going to play it to that winger, right, it's quite hard to get that pass over to them. And on paper, even if you do it, it should give you time to sort it out. Unless, of course, Vitalu breaks into the box and then does the dink across. That's a little bit different. That's how you can kind of beat that defensive pattern. But you will frequently see this typical form of defense used by most teams when they're attacking this way. So here we've got Fatawu on the ball. But what happens if Fatawu loses the ball here to this 11? What do you do? And, this is what happens. Now you're on transition. What do you do? But actually, what would happen under the Enzo system is that if we'd lose the ball, you would actually see this. you would see these players compress, maybe not quite this close, but they try and do something like this and win the ball back within the first 7 seconds. So even if you lose the ball, you're trying to snap it back and get it immediately. Now, let's say you can't get the ball in that sequence of play. Then the next thing you will do is you'll try and foul the opposition high up the field to prevent them getting into the half here. That's the next thing that you would try to do. Now, assuming that none of that works, then what will happen is that players will start to get back into position and you'll want to try and get back into a 4-4-2 shape. And what will happen here is that Fass will be running back, but you'll probably have here, and this is why Ricardo is the inverted fullback, is he would come across here to try and play this back and get into the 4-4-2. Buonanotte would kind of come drifting back too. Now, this is probably where I need to make the video. But the point I'm trying to make here is that if this player here is Justin instead of Fatawu, the big difference is his starting position and what he needs to do in order to support the attack. Because if it's JJ will be playing a lot of the game here, meaning he's going to be going from here to here and back again the whole game long. And that means that even if you've got stamina, it's really difficult to do that all game long. And when you're caught on transition, there's going to be many times where you're either behind the ball when you're trying to attack, so you can't really support this front four here, or you're caught upfield when the other team have the ball and you can't get back in time to make the challenge because you're not goal side. So either way, it creates a problem. And this can also be roles reversed on the other side if it's Christensen. Whereas with the system that I've described, if it's Fatawu, even if like this player does get clear, Fatawu can get on his bike and he's going to be faster. And because he's got a higher starting position, he shouldn't be getting as tired in terms of coming back. Now, of course, it all sounds good on paper. There are also some things that can go wrong with such a system, but I'm trying to give you more of an idea as to why fundamentally the Steve Cooper system of using a fullback isn't the best way to do it. If we were going to go for his system, what you would have to have, in my opinion, is you'd have to have a fullback that was world class at doing something like that. And the obvious example that is, of course, retired a long time ago would be Dani Alves for Barcelona. So when he pushed forward to join the attack, he was so good on the ball that he was as good as a winger, to be honest with you. And he wasn't bad defensively. Or maybe in the Premier League, if you had either Andrew Robertson or Trent Alexander-Arnold, that could also help. But do note that Alexander-Arnold is another player that often gets criticised for his lack of defensive ability. And why is it? It's because he's supporting the attack. So again, it goes to show that even a top player can have some of these issues. Anyway, that's it. That's everything for now. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'd love to have you put in the comments down below not only what you thought about the video, but what did you think about the game? Did you think Cooper got away with it, or do you think that we have to give him some praise? Do you want to see us stick to attacking with 5, or do you think it's too cavalier? And what do you think is going to happen for the rest of the season? I love that I've got in this one, we've got Dancing Fatawu back again. He, for me, Buonanotte is exciting, but we all thought that it was going to be Abdul Fatawu's season this year, and it still could be. I hope him and Mavadidi can continue to be the dual wingers, cause a lot of problems, and bring us a lot of joy in the future. So thank you so much. As always, I'm going to leave a link in the description to Fox's talk. I've got some cool examples there for you too. Hope you enjoyed this. I really hope you enjoyed the game. If nothing else, I've seen that I think there's like a 15-minute extended highlights video on the official Leicester channel, and it's really worth watching that one. A lot of fun. Thank you so much, everyone, and see you next time. Bye-bye.